It's time to talk ACC football on the Our Lads Football Network for the OFN today. And a little late, but better than ever. The Miami Hurricanes and Gary Ferman joining us. We were going to do this before the season began. We were not able to put this together, but when we wanted to. But I figured, you know what? Let's take a chance. Just in case Miami pulls off the upset.
Miami's 2-0, baby. You know, the effect is the same, Greg.
The atmosphere down there must be, well, you tell me. I mean, when was the last time it's been this crazy?
2017.
Wow.
I'm sure you and most of your listeners were watching on TV this weekend, and Hard Rock Stadium, even though there were only about 49,000 fans there, was rocking. And, you know, the South Florida community has been kind of like a wait-and-see mode. They want to see some victories. They want to see some good football before they come back out in droves, and that's understandable the way the last several seasons have gone here. But there's a lot of hope, Greg. Miami has shown up for 2023 and looking good so far.
Yes, it was a huge win, and it really it's you know, it just shows you how these week one matchups against inferior opponents sometimes really just doesn't mean much, even though Miami had struggled against those types of teams over the last few years. But because you didn't really see anything resembling offensively what we saw on Saturday. I'm sure they would probably hold some things back, but I have to ask you, of course.
Let me tell you something, Greg. This year they did it differently. Like normally they would schedule Bethune-Cookman or Florida A&M week one.
Okay.
This year they got Miami of Ohio. And listen, I don't need to tell you. You study all the football teams in America. No one's gonna predict them to make to make the college football playoffs or anything like that. They are a middle of the road MAC team, but they're better than Bethune. They're better than FAMU. To me, that's the baseline of what Miami should schedule. And I thought that playing that game helped prepare them for a real game against Texas A&M, more so than playing Bethune-Cookman would have.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And by the way, Miami, actually, the program itself, if you look at it, one of the better MAC programs, actually. I put them above being a middle of the pack. So that was a good team to prepare Texas A&M. I straight off the bat, before I get into anything else, the big story really is Tyler Van Dyke. And what happened to him last year to outside observers was just very strange. And I know he had injuries and there's change of schemes and things of that nature, but this is the guy that everybody thought we were going to see last year. So really, what was it? Was it just like I said? Is it as simple as that, or was it something else?
It was as simple as that. Josh Gaddis came in as offensive coordinator. There was a complete, total disconnect throughout the program with him and the other coaches, the players. It never clicked, and it took Tyler Van Dyke a while to get his feet wet in that offense. And actually, just as he was starting to get it, he threw for almost 500 yards in North Carolina last year, Greg. And he's starting to get it, and then he gets hurt. And then the injury derailed the second half of the season for him. So he's the same guy. He'll tell you he's even better than he's ever been earlier in his career. But he was totally off the radar in college football. Nobody was expecting anything of him. Yeah. That's changed, Greg. Yeah. He looked pretty good against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And now Miami's going to play some significant games here down the road. You got Clemson, you got Florida State, you got North Carolina. Those are going to be three real national attention games here in the next couple months. And Tyler Van Dyke's going to have an opportunity to put himself in a nice position for the NFL draft, assuming that's the direction he chooses to go in, which is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, especially after what happened last year. If he has a really good year this year and they say, hey, first round, he'd be gone.
But what if they don't say first round? What if they say second round or third round?
Then maybe you come back. Yeah,
he's got something to think about.
Yep,
because he can make $1 million in NIL money,
and it's going to be a really good quarterback class next year. So you might just say to yourself, well, maybe I could be the first quarterback in 2025.
Correct. And make $1 million along the way.
Yeah.
And improve your stock and try to win the Heisman. And
there you go.
I mean, listen, I could make the sales pitch to him. My guess is they've already made up their minds. They really want to go in the draft this year, but I'm not so sure that's the best move for him. we'll see how the rest of this season goes.
And speaking of that schedule, and again, I know it's early, but I would have to say, from what I've seen the first couple of weeks of the season, Miami's going to have their talent-wise, they could beat, and matter of fact, I'm not going to say should, but they could beat just about every team on their schedule now, with the exception of that Florida State matchup being the one where you go, okay, now they're playing maybe a big boy here.
They're playing at Joe Campbell, FSU, a hot FSU team, but they won't go there scared, Greg.
No, not anymore. No,
they will not go there scared. They are going to they have the confidence that they can compete with anybody on their schedule. And if you're going to beat this team, you're going to have to play a good ball game.
Yeah. So things, it just shows you. I mean, wow, just a couple of years ago, Clemson. Georgia's they're like the last dominant team program standing, because even Alabama's now all of a sudden back to the pack. Clemson's back to the pack. So it's really great for the ACC, of course, because a lot of teams
Ohio
are getting
State
better.
will be back to the pack. We'll see.
Looks like it's possible. It's possible. I would say so. I would say so. Chris Stroud's gone. You can say what you want about this kid McCord, but he's not Chris Stroud. So, yeah, next year you got the whole big. That's why next year, if Van Dyke does hang around, becomes even more interesting because of the 16-team playoff. Now you can actually have a lot better of an opportunity of getting into a situation where maybe I can want to run and win a national championship. So, but first things first, and I know, again, everybody's probably going, all right, calm down, it's one game. But look, when you're this starved for success, I understand why there's a lot of people and like us that are thinking ahead. And one of the things I know,
nobody wants to calm down here, Greg. They're fired up down here. See, they're walking around with these orange and green colored glasses, man.
I think you should just do the interview like that. Yes,
we are fired up in Miami. But no, in total seriousness, you're right. People do need to calm down, one game at a time.
Yeah. But one of the things that I clearly noticed and they had some pretty decent playmakers a few years ago, but it's just such a big difference. I mean, these guys, Restrepo, and then you take a look, of course, of what we saw from Colby Young. I mean, these are this is just a step up. As good as those guys were a couple of years ago, you can just tell these guys are legit. These guys, you're not seeing drop passes from this group. I mean, this group is step up, and that's what you need. So do they have the running game? I know Parrish has looked good. Are they a very well-balanced team right now?
They are. They really are. And the reason is the offensive line. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, has been talking about that in the last day or so. They did a great job rebuilding their offensive line. They went to Alabama and got a starting level guard in Javion Cohen. They went to UCF and got who they think might be the best center in the country in Matt Lee. They signed a couple 5-stars. One of them is starting at right tackle in Francis Mauigoa. So they have rebuilt their offensive line, and I'm sure you saw the way it held up against Texas A&M, which brings one of the best defensive lines in the country to the stadium on Saturdays. So Tyler Van Dyke didn't get touched the whole game, not once. Did not get touched, which is amazing when you consider that Texas A&M's lining up at 5-stars all across the front of their defensive line. And I'm sure if they could do it all over again, Texas A&M would bring more pressure and try to blitz more guys on Van Dyke. I mean, Van Dyke pretty much had his way in that game. I'm sure they expected to be able to rush the passer better than they did, which is why we didn't see a lot of blitzing in their game plan. But Miami's offensive line has held up very well in the first 2 games of the year. They ran the ball really well against Miami of Ohio. They still ran for 4 yards a carry against Texas A&M, but like I said, did not allow their quarterback to get touched in the drop back passing game. And they are really fired up about this offensive line. It has totally revitalized Miami on the offensive side of the football.
And the other thing that's important to note is, and I don't know how much you tell me, but Cristobal being an offensive line guy, how much attention does he put?
Only everything. Alex Mirball's the O-line coach, but they've been best friends since they were like 6 years old.
All right.
And anytime you look at Mario Cristobal, he's over there by the O-line. Like, that's his baby. Yeah. And he went out and he recruited these monsters, and they're going to be good for several years to come here, and they'll keep recruiting elite offensive line prospects. And it has turned at the offensive line position at Miami for sure. And yes, that is Mario Cristobal. That is everything to Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, the last week or so, going into the season and talking about Miami and where they were and doing preview shows and things of that nature, there were still, of course, a lot of doubters, but I think what it was they were just expecting so much so soon with last year's disappointing season. And it's like,
Yes.
guys, you got to relax. I mean, Cristobal, what made him so perfect for this job is how great he recruits. And you got to give someone who recruits time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
yeah, you're right. You're spot on, Greg. You hit it right on the head. You hit the nail right on the head, man.
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't have thought that this is going to work out. It's a marriage made in heaven, and this is just the beginning.
People are desperate for wins here. Like they're desperate to see Miami relevant again.
Yeah,
and they were hoping it would just be snap the fingers and it happens, and that's not reality. I mean, at all. Now, did they have to win 5 games last year? Probably not.
No,
they maybe could have won 6 or 7, but listen, it happened. They went through it, and I don't think they're going to be winning 5 games this year.
No, that's not going to be the case. I've got to ask you about the status of Cameron Kitchens.
He's back with the team. They released him from the hospital the next morning. I'm guessing he just had a concussion, something along those lines that just seemed a little bit more severe at the time. So they were taking every precaution. I wouldn't expect him to play Thursday night against Bethune-Cookman.
Why do that?
I don't even know if we will see him the next week against Temple, but I feel pretty confident that when they get to like the Georgia Tech, North Carolina games, that he'll be back on the field.
Yeah, it's perfect bye week for him. So that'll get him ready. No reason to put anybody like that into harm's way for the next few weeks. Because, again, even Georgia Tech after the bye, they look like they might be a little bit better, but they're not in Miami's class right now.
But you don't want to mess with that game, so we might see him then,
Sure. No, absolutely, yes. Especially after the bye. That gives them a whole month, basically, to recover. And then the North Carolina game is the big one, next big one on the schedule. And with Drake May at quarterback, and if Van Dyke keeps playing like this, that's going to be a hell of a matchup. And that's going to be on everybody's radar for sure. Because once that North Carolina game hits, that is a hell of a 4 out of 5 week stretch. That is going to be very exciting for the fans with North Carolina, NC State, and Florida State on the road. So 3 out of those 4 big games on the road. That's the next step, is to show that you can do it on the road.
Yep. Now, North Carolina's going to go on the road in 2 weeks. They got to play at Pittsburgh. That will be a very difficult game for them to win. Pitt's better than people think. But, we'll see. I mean, you got to hope that both teams go into that game undefeated, and it creates a real showcase. It would be great.
Since obviously Miami in the ACC and everybody was surprised with Duke's win, what do you think of, say, Duke, or is there any other team in this ACC so far? Miami a surprise win, Duke with the surprise win. Give me a few teams, including maybe Duke, that you think are teams that are legit in this conference.
I think Pitt is more legit than people think. I think they certainly are legit. I think NC State is capable of beating just about anybody on any given weekend. Obviously North Carolina, obviously Miami, obviously Florida State, and I think you still got to respect Clemson to a degree. So, that's like 6 pretty good teams in the ACC this year. It's a good year for ACC football.
Yeah. Well, do you believe in it all? Like, say, Louisville and Syracuse?
I don't. I really don't. But I think they're the next level down.
Well,
but
Jeff Brom, going to give him time.
Maybe.
It might take him a year or two, but he'll get Louisville back. I mean, he did wonders at Purdue, so I think he'll be able to fix things at Louisville. Satterfield was okay, but that's not what they were expecting when they hired him. Were you really surprised at Duke's win, by the way, in the way that they beat Clemson, or was it more disappointing from Clemson's point of view?
I mean, it's both. I mean, it's obviously great for Duke, a continuation of what they started last year. Mike Elko is very quickly becoming maybe the hottest coach in America for what he's doing there. I don't expect him to be there very long, but but I mean, I was surprised that Clemson wasn't better than what they were. I mean,
do you buy into that? Because everybody's jumping immediately after the loss. Everybody's jumping on the you can't do this non-transfer thing. That this motto or this creed that he has is like he'll bring a transfer in,
okay.
But
I don't agree with that because I mean I agree the transfer portal has become a big part of college football, and I agree that maybe they could have done a better job of hitting the transfer portal and supplementing their roster. But you got to understand, Clemson has been recruiting at the upper tiers of the sport for many years.
Yep.
So if they're hitting on those guys, they don't need the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Now, if they aren't hitting on those guys and they're not going to the portal, now you got a problem. And we're going to see if there really is a problem as this season continues to unfold.
Yeah.
I mean, if they finish 9-3, 10-2, like, come on.
Yeah,
like, you think they're going to go 11-0 every year?
Yeah.
I mean, they still got a lot of very good players on that roster.
And I think the thing is really, like you said, they're a 9-win team. What's missing is they can be a national championship contender if they find one of those 5-star quarterbacks again. They just have had bad quarterback play, let's just put it that way, the last few years. They're getting nothing out of the quarterback spot. This is football. I mean, you can't get
hard
nothing.
To find those guys.
It is. But they've been missing. And then they also haven't had a lot of help at the receiver position either.
Yeah.
So,
and not everybody that's ranked a 5-star is really a 5-star.
True.
Yeah.
Speaking of 5 stars, you mentioned one of them on the offensive line for Miami, and we talked about recruiting for Cristobal. So who else? Give us some other players that you think we'll either see making some contributions this year or next year.
Oh man. Well, I mean, obviously let's just start an offense. Van Dyke is an obvious one. All across that O-line, Jalen Rivers is going to probably go into the NFL draft after this year. Javion Cohen is going to probably go into the NFL draft after this year. Moving over to defense, you got Akeem Mesidor, who he's hurt a little bit, but he's a defensive end that I think you'll see get drafted.
Is Taylor? What's Taylor's upside?
Leonard Taylor. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I saw Mel Kiper said he's going to be number 13 in the draft this year. I mean, he's got a lot to prove.
You don't think so?
I think he's got a lot to prove. I mean, he certainly hasn't played to that level to this point.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's got potential, but he's got to learn to play hard consistently, and he's got to get himself in better condition, to where he can play more reps. Now they got, I think, 45 out of him in the Texas A&M game. I thought that was encouraging. Usually he's around 20 to 30. But he's a kid with a lot of potential. I think he's got to grow up. I think he's got to become consistent. I personally would like to see him see this through for another year and just grow up a little bit before he has to go deal with the NFL.
Yeah. What about the secondary? Of course, we just talked about Kinchins, and you got James Williams. What's their ceiling?
High. James Williams, I think it's starting to come together for him. I'm not sure that he won't be a hybrid linebacker in the National Football League. I'm not sure he's really a safety. They're moving him around quite a bit this year at Miami, so time will tell on that. But he'll play on Sundays. There's no doubt about it. I think Kinchins will play on Sundays. No doubt about that either.
Who's the biggest? If you take Van Dyke out of the equation, who's the top NFL prospect on the team right now?
If you asked any scout in the league, they would tell you Leonard Taylor.
They're gonna tell you Taylor. Okay.
Yeah.
And who do you think?
I think Van Dyke. Of the guys that you got to look at here. I mean, they got a receiver.
Clearly, Van Dyke and Taylor, they're just above everyone else.
They got a receiver, Colby Young, I think he's got a chance to play in the National Football League. I think it's a big receiver. There's a couple other guys, but I think Van Dyke is a rock solid number 2, number 3 draft pick, and I don't know that he's Patrick Mahomes, but
Sure.
he can be on an NFL roster for a long time, even if it's as a backup.
Yeah, you do not have to get drafted in the first round anymore to have an impact in the NFL.
No.
So,
No doubt.
and we're seeing also a lot of the time when you're not drafted in the first round, the best chance you have is experience. And the guys that give you 3-4 years in college, those are the ones that and they may be there for 3 or 4 years because they're not the sexy, oh, I'm really great for a year or two, so let me go quickly in the NFL. But they stay there for 3 or 4 years. They learn, they get experience, and then they pop into the NFL as mid-round, late-round draft picks, and then people, and all of a sudden, wait a second, this guy's not bad after all, because he knows a lot of the stuff that these hotshot one-year guys just don't know or can't handle just yet. I mean, just look at Brock Purdy at San Francisco right now. So several examples of that happening lately in the NFL, and I think that's great for the league. They could use all the quarterback play that they can get. All right, so and as far I want to lastly leave you to because you mentioned so is it pronounced Mauanoa? Mauagoa. And tell me, besides Mauagoa, are there going to be any more freshmen that are going to make any kind of impact this year?
There's 2 that'll play a lot. There's Samson Okunola. He was also a 5-star offensive tackle coming out of high school. The difference between him and Mauagoa is that he played in Massachusetts, where the level of high school football is not even close, not even in the stratosphere of what Mauagoa saw at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida.
Okay.
So Mauagoa shows up on campus much more ready to play right away. And then there's another one, Matthew McCoy, who's coming up, who's going to be a very good offensive lineman as well. And then they got a couple young kids. I keep an eye on a kid by the name of Tommy Kinsler. He's a true freshman. I think, in the next year or so, you'll see him start to emerge.
And what does he play, Kinsler?
He's an offensive lineman as well.
Oh, so they're all offensive linemen. Cristobal knows what he's doing with that group, that's for sure.
That was the focal point of recruiting last year, no doubt.
Well, that's smart. I mean, it's football. You got to win at the trenches, and that's why Cristobal
Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, Greg, said that in his career he had never seen an offensive line play the way the Miami offensive line played on Saturday against Texas A&M.
That's very encouraging.
How about that?
You can win a lot of football games doing that. I mean, Jim Harbaugh learned his lesson a couple of years ago. He had to get an almost fired kind of remembrance about how he used to win football games, and that's where it starts, in the trenches. So anyway, it's great to see Miami win. I always think it's great for college football but especially the Florida teams, and for it to happen possibly in the same year that Florida State and Miami can get relevant again on the national stage. That's just terrific.
I think it's happening. We'll see. Miami's got just one game at a time.
Yeah, and I think that next year is going to be even better. I know a lot of people, there are some purists aren't into the whole playoff thing, but I think it's going to be the biggest thing in sports next year when they go to 16 teams. But we have 4 this year.
12,
we have 4 this year. So we'll see if Miami can make a case for getting in. They've got 1 in the bank, beating an SEC team.
That's happening a lot, but we'll see.
Yeah, we do. A long way to go before that's part of the game. But I'm sure there are a lot of fans dreaming, as well they should. That's their job, to dream and have fun and enjoy it. So, Gary, appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you again. Hey, if it's going to be a really successful season, I'm sure we're going to talk at least for a few more times.
All righty, Greg. Looking forward to it.
By the way, did you have a regular show you're doing right now?
Well, we do shows every day at canesport.com.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to come check us out, it's canesport.com. And we've got tons of content, great deals for new subscribers. And we'd love to have any football fans or Miami fans come join our community.
Yeah, I am definitely going to leave a few links in the description area for people to check that out for sure. So while you're finishing watching this broadcast, you can go ahead and check that out. Click that on your way out. So, Gary, appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you again. Maybe, who knows, maybe before the North Carolina game.
All righty, Greg.
Take care.
Thank you.